Hello everyone and welcome to Lost in the Reel. Today I'm going to be ranking all 17 new release movies that I saw in March 2022. This is also going to include 2 movies that came out in February, but I saw them this month, so I'm going to count them as March movies. Now, this is something that I used to do way back at the beginning of my channel, and I love doing this because it allows me to talk about every single movie that I saw in the month, because there's just not enough damn time in the day to do a full video review of each movie that I see. So this gives me a chance to talk about all of them. Unfortunately, these videos did not do very well in views, so I kind of stopped doing them, but I'm gonna bring it back and see how it goes, so please let me know if you like these ranking videos for the month, and I will continue doing them. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. So, before we get started, just want to go over a couple of things. I have 7 tiers that I rank each of these movies in, starting with masterpiece to amazing, very good, just okay, meh, very bad, and then the worst of the worst. The first movie that I'm going to start off with is the movie that came out first, and then the last movie I talk about will be the movie that came out most recently. And then after I talk about all of these movies and place them in each tier, I'm gonna move the films around so we get the top 3 movies of the month and then the very worst of the worst of the month. Okay, now let's get started with a movie that came out in February, Jackass Forever. So here we are, 2 decades later, and these idiots are still running around and playing pranks on each other, and we are paying money to watch them do it. You're either gonna love or hate Jackass Forever, but I think these guys have been around long enough that you're going to know if you like this type of humor. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of prank movies. I hated Bad Trip that came out last year. I just did not think that that movie came together at all, and it just kind of went to the extreme in a very unfunny way. But Jackass Forever, there is just something so undeniably charming and funny about this movie, and I laughed my ass off during it. Is the humor brilliant? Absolutely not, but you know what you're paying for, and this movie really delivered on all of the laughs that I was hoping for. And I really think this comes from the fact that these guys have been doing this for so long, and they have such camaraderie and chemistry with each other, so it's like they get better with age. So this is probably the best movie of this franchise, and I'm not gonna lie, I'll pay to see more. So I'm gonna say Jackass Forever is very good. Now, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything, but if you just want to sit down and watch some dumb, hilarious fun, Jackass Forever is the movie. Next up is a little indie horror thriller called Those Who Walk Away, not to be confused with Those Who Wish Me Dead, which I keep calling this movie, but it's Those Who Walk Away. This also came out in February, and it stars Boo Boo Stewart and Scarlett Sperduto as 2 people who meet on an online dating app, and they meet up for a first date, and she convinces him to go to this haunted house, but he realizes that she has some nefarious plans for him. This is a really interesting little movie. When it first started, I was like, whoa, this movie was made on like a $15 budget. It's really, really low budget. But it's really cool because the whole movie is filmed like it is one shot. And I am a sucker for these type of movies. But unfortunately, the first 40 minutes or so is literally them walking around town talking. And even though the 2 have good chemistry with each other, they're just not the best actors, so it just completely took me out of the movie. And once we finally get to the damn haunted house, There weren't really a lot of scares. I think the practical effects and makeup are really impressive for a low-budget horror like this. Honestly, I really wanted to like this movie for the sheer ambition of it, and the fact that these filmmakers really did pull off what seemed like a one-take film. Unfortunately, this movie, it's just boring as all hell, the acting is not good, and it's just not scary. So I'm gonna say Those Who Wish Me Dead is very bad. So the next movie I'm going to be talking about is the mystery thriller The Weekend Away that came out on Netflix at the beginning of the month, and it stars Leighton Meester as this woman who goes to Croatia to meet up with her best friend. They have this amazing night out on the town, they get really drunk, but it ends with them bickering. And when she wakes up, she realizes that her best friend is missing, and then she's accused of killing her best friend, and she has to try to clear her name. Now, I'm kind of shocked that this movie went so under the radar and just with little to no fanfare, because this is the type of film that people eat up on Netflix. And it was on the top 10, I think, for maybe a weekend, and then it just disappeared. And no one's talking about it. So that makes me kind of sad, because even though this is not a great film or even a good film per se, this movie was shocking, and I was on the edge of my seat for the entire film. This is almost like a trashy B-movie thriller that comes out on Lifetime, but it's elevated because of its cast and the acting, and also the on-location shooting. And like I said, there are so many twists and turns in this movie, and they are ridiculous, but I was constantly going, what is going to happen next? I had no idea. So I had a lot of fun with this movie, and I think if you like your thrillers kind of trashy and steamy, then you're gonna like The Weekend Away. So I'm gonna say it is just okay. Now we have the horror romantic comedy Fresh, starring Daisy Edgar Jones and Sebastian Stan, that is now streaming on Hulu. Now this is another horror thriller that is all about online dating in our modern times. But it starts out with almost like it's just going to be a straightforward romantic comedy film about this woman who's sick and tired with dating online. You see her at the beginning going on a terrible date with this douchebag, and then she finds her Prince Charming in the produce section at a grocery store. But then the title credits roll about 30 minutes into the film, and you realize that this is a straight-up horror movie, and he is going to abduct her for her fresh meat. Now, this movie is fucked up. It is gruesome. It's not going to be for everybody because it's going to make you queasy and nauseous. But I love that about this movie. I love that it takes chances, and it really plays with genre conventions. And it also has style to spare. Now, I do think that there is one story thread in this film that just did not go anywhere. And I also personally think that they could have taken the violence and, to another level to really make it this extreme film and make it maybe a little bit more memorable in my eyes. But I understand why they didn't take it to the extreme, because they wanted to make it as appetizing for general audiences as possible. But I would have personally liked them to have gone there. But besides that, I had so much fun with this movie, and if you can handle gruesome cannibalism and watching people eat human meat, then this is just one crazy ride. It really took me for a loop, and I really like where it goes. So I'm gonna say Fresh is very good. It's super close to amazing, but there's just a couple of things that hold it back. But very, very good and absolutely worth watching on Hulu. And next up is a movie that I have not been able to talk about on my channel yet, and I have been dying to. The only reason I didn't do a full video review of it is because I didn't get to see it until a week into its release, and everybody and their mothers had talked about it already. But I'm going to talk about it now, and that is The Batman. Now, I went into this movie with extremely high expectations. Batman is by far my favorite superhero. And this film just blew my expectations out of the water. I think this film is absolutely incredible. And I know some people are saying it's too slow, it's boring. I get it. It's a 3-hour superhero movie. Did it need to be that long? I don't know, but I wanted it to keep going, in my personal opinion. And I really saw what Matt Reeves was trying to accomplish here, really creating this noir, gritty, David Fincher 7 type vibe, and I think he pulled it off in every way possible. I think Robert Pattinson is the perfect Batman. I think that he could have done a little bit better to differentiate his Batman from his Bruce Wayne. They're both very brooding and emo, but he really pulls off the Batman part of the performance. And I think if we do get more Batman movies, which I'm sure we will with him in it, I think he can kind of do more with the character in future installments. But I thought Robert Pattinson was amazing. I think the rest of the cast is phenomenal. Paul Dano as the Riddler freaking killed it. Colin Farrell as the Penguin, unrecognizable, and I can't wait to see his HBO Max series. So I ate this movie up, and I went and watched it again because I was like, there is no way that this movie is as good as I'm saying that it is in my head. And I think I liked it better on the second time. My only issue with the film is that I think the last 30 minutes just aren't as strong as the first 2 hours or so. And that's because once we hit that climax and we find out what the Riddler is up to, I just think it kind of crumbles a little bit, unfortunately. So it's not the perfect film. It is not the 5 out of 5 that I wanted it to be, but I would say it's a 4.95 out of 5. It is easily my favorite film of the year, and honestly, I think it's my favorite blockbuster film since Mad Max Fury Road, way back in 2015, I think. So, I mean, I love this movie. I can't wait for it to come out on HBO Max soon, just to experience it over and over again. So, even though it's not a 5 out of 5, I'm still saying The Batman is a masterpiece. Oh God, okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, going from the best movie of the year to possibly one of the worst movies I have seen in years, we have Asking for It. Now, I saw this movie all the way back at the Tribeca Film Festival last year. And when this movie finished, I said to myself, there is no way they're releasing this movie, at least in the shape that it is right now. So I'm shocked that they actually did release this movie, even though it didn't really go into theaters and they just released it on VOD. I'm just shocked that they even allowed people to watch this movie. It is that bad. It stars Kiersey Clemons, Vanessa Hudgens, Alexander Shipp, Gabourey Sidibe, Luke Hemsworth, Ezra Miller. So we have this huge all-star cast. And it is about this group of vigilante women who have all been sexually assaulted in some way by men. And it's about them kind of taking control of their lives and getting revenge on these abhorrent men, basically. And I love the idea for this film. I think the idea was there, but this film is so sloppily put together. The editing is horrendous. The acting is terrible. One moment you think that this movie is like this gritty action crime thriller, and then all of a sudden it's going for humor, and this movie is just all over the place. And the worst thing about it is this movie about women taking control of their lives is written and directed by a white man. So take with that what you will, but this movie is just so ill-advised and it left such a bad taste in my mouth. And it really wants to be this extreme movie with this message, but it never goes there. It never takes it to the place that it needed to have gone to leave any lasting impact. So I don't even know if this is a movie that you can say it's so bad it's good. It is just complete trash a waste of your time. So asking for it 100% is going in the worst of the worst here, and it is one of the worst of the worst in a very, very long time. Moving forward, we have Pixar's latest, Turning Red, the period comedy about a young girl who is coming of age, and every time she gets excited, she turns into a giant red panda. Now, when I saw the first trailer come out for this movie, I was a little bummed because it looked very mid-tier Pixar. It looked sweet, it looked cute, but it just didn't look like it was going to break any boundaries and become Pixar's next classic. And unfortunately, my expectations for it came true. I think this is a really sweet and cute movie, like I said, and I think the relationship between the girl group in this movie is what drives this film, and this very authentic relationship between these young girls. They're not catty with each other. They're not going at each other's throats. They're really rooting for each other to try and succeed in life. And that is what I took away from this movie and what I liked the most. I just didn't think it was all that funny. I didn't connect to it personally as many of the other Pixar movies. So I will say Turning Red, despite being beautifully animated and having a adorable red panda in it, is just okay. Next up, we have another new Netflix original movie. This one definitely did not fly under the radar. It has proven very popular, and I think it's still in the top 10. But it is the big-budget action sci-fi spectacle, The Adam Project, starring Ryan Reynolds, Jennifer Garner, Zoe Saldana, and Mark Ruffalo. It is all about a time-traveling fighter pilot who has to go back in time to meet up with his younger self to try and save the future from impending doom. Now, this is Ryan Reynolds' second film in the last 2 years with director Shawn Levy. And before Shawn Levy started teaming up with Ryan Reynolds, his movies were not good, to say the least. I did not look up to him as a director at all. But there is something about Ryan Reynolds that brings out Shawn Levy's best. And Free Guy was one of the biggest surprises of the year for me last year. The Adam Project is nowhere near as good as Free Guy, but this movie still had a lot of heart that I was not expecting. And it also, the action is fantastic, and it really gives you this sense of nostalgia for classic family sci-fi 80s movies, like E.T., like Back to the Future, and I just really got this sense of fun and fantasy that I think is sorely missing from a lot of movies nowadays. Unfortunately, I do think The Adam Project is extremely formulaic, and it's almost as if Netflix has this checklist of how to make a crowd-pleasing blockbuster movie, and this movie is literally checking off every single box on that list. And Netflix is churning out a lot of these movies, and I really hope they don't stick to the formula each and every time. And I do also think that the villain in this movie is terrible, and there is some horrible special effects, de-aging special effects at the end of this movie that are just kind of unforgivable. The rest of the VFX in the film are great though. And it almost falls apart at the end too. Despite those issues though, why I think The Adam Project is worth watching is for that genuine heart that I was really not expecting this movie to have at all. And it really hit home for me in a way that, honestly, it made me tear up, which was a huge surprise. So if you want something with a little bit of heart that's for the entire family, that's going to give you that hint of nostalgia that you're searching for, then I think The Adam Project is a fun enough time. But beware, there are a lot of issues. So I will say The Adam Project is just okay. Next, we have the sci-fi mind-bender Ultrasound, written by Connor Steckschulte and directed by Rob Schroeder, and it is streaming now on VOD. It is all about a man named Glenn whose car breaks down and he's brought in by a husband and wife and ends up having a very odd night that leads to him sleeping in the bed with the wife. He wakes up the next morning and is hungover and is like, I need to get the hell out of here. So he goes home and he thinks everything's done with this. And the husband ends up at his doorstep with some very frightening news for him. Now, I don't want to say anything more about this movie because there is so much more and it goes to some crazy places. But this movie did not get a lot of buzz, and I understand why, because it is a strange movie and it is extremely confusing. This movie definitely does not hold your hand while going through its plot points. You really have to pay attention, and even once it's over, you're probably not going to know what the hell happened. Now, I loved it when I saw it at Tribeca last year, but it wasn't until this year and I watched it again that I found my ultimate appreciation for it. I still don't understand everything about this film, but I do find it fascinating enough and interesting enough that I want to keep going back for more to try to unveil all of its secrets and uncover what I'm missing. So that's what I love about this film. It's a puzzle box that might be unsolvable, but you want to try to keep solving it. So I will say that Ultrasound is amazing. And I know not a lot of people will think that on the first viewing, but if you give it a second shot, I think you might be on the same page as I am with it. Now we have the crime thriller period piece, The Outfit, written by Jonathan McLean and Graham Moore, and directed by Graham Moore. Now, Moore is the man who wrote The Imitation Game and won an Academy Award for that, and he continues his hot streak with The Outfit. I think this is such an incredible little movie, and another one that no one is talking about, and it's so sad because it just came out and it's almost out of theaters already. So I want to continue talking about this film, and I hope and pray that it does find an audience. The movie stars an incredible Mark Rylance as Leonard, the tailor/cutter, who's moved from London all the way to Chicago in the 1950s to start fresh and start his business. It also stars Zoe Dutch as his assistant, as well as Dylan O'Brien and Johnny Flynn as two mobsters, and Simon Russell Beale and Nikki Amuka Bird, who round out the cast. This is such an incredible ensemble, and it's a very simple, straightforward kind of crime story, but the twists and turns that it takes, you are not going to see coming. It's very dialogue-driven, slow burn, it takes place in one setting, and it almost plays out like a stage play. And I love that about this film. It's very old-fashioned, but in the best way possible. And by the end of this movie, I was left breathless. And honestly, I was left wanting more. And I think that is probably my biggest qualm with the film, is that I wanted more character development with some of these supporting characters. And I could have had another 20 to 30 minutes of build-up. Because there's just so much here that I just fell in love with. So I know some people will disagree with me on that because this is very much a slow burn and it does take patience to get into it. But I think this film is incredible. The script is dynamite. If I was a member of the Academy, I would vote for this as best screenplay of the year, so far at least. So I definitely think The Outfit is a must-watch film, and it is very, very good. Also very close to amazing. Next up, we have the Hulu original film Deep Water, starring Ben Affleck and Ana de Armas, directed by the prolific director Adrian Lyne, who has not made a movie in 20 years. But this man, he's directed Fatal Attraction and Jacob's Ladder and 8.5 Weeks and Unfaithful. He is the king of the erotic thriller, and this was supposed to be an erotic thriller, but it has no thrills, and it's not sexy, and it is boring as hell, and you can see where it is going from a mile away. It is about Ben Affleck's character who does not want to get into a divorce with his wife, so he allows her to be frivolous and have affairs with other men, but those men start going missing, and we're left to wonder if Ben Affleck is the one that's killing these men. This movie was just so frustrating to me because we have this incredible director, these two stars that were in a relationship with each other, so there should be this explosive chemistry. Then we have Sam Levinson of Euphoria fame and Zach Helm, who wrote Stranger Than Fiction. They're writing the screenplay. It's based upon a novel by Patricia Highsmith, and who's just an incredible author. So everything here should have worked, but none of it does. This is a total snooze fest, and you can see where it's going a mile away. So I don't recommend this movie whatsoever. I think Deep Water... I think Deep Water is very bad. I definitely wouldn't recommend it. Another day, another Netflix original movie. We have Windfall, which stars Jesse Plemons, Jason Segel, and Lily Collins. So Lily Collins and Jesse Plemons are this rich couple who have this incredible villa, and Jason Segel is this thief who has broken into their house, doesn't think that they're home. They end up coming home, and he tries to get money out of them. And kind of takes them hostage almost. This is very much so a Hitchcockian thriller. It's another movie that takes place in one setting, very, very dialogue driven, but unlike The Outfit, I found some of the dialogue to be a little clunky and these characters kind of uninteresting. You know, I really appreciate what this film was trying to be. This old-fashioned style thriller that we don't get to see very often, that is very intricately plotted, and I think that it gets the style and the vibe right, but everything else is just kind of middle of the road. And when the movie finished, I was just kind of left sitting there like, like that's a really forgettable movie. And the only thing that's really memorable about Windfall, I think, is the crazy out there ending. And I don't think the ending worked all that well. So, you know, I like these performers. I really wanted to love this movie, but it's just a meh from me. Oh boy, here's another movie that I really, really wanted to love, and that is X. Now, I know so many people are absolutely adoring this movie. They are raving about it right now, and it's already getting a prequel movie called Pearl. You know, this one is probably so far my most disappointing movie of the year, and I think just because I went in with my expectations so high. This is a slasher film written and directed by Ty West, and it stars Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, who I love, Brittany Snow, Kid Cudi, Owen Campbell, and Martin Henderson. And it takes place in the 70s, another period piece, and it's about a group of young filmmakers who set out to make this adult porno in rural Texas. And the farm that they're filming this movie at is owned by these elderly people, and they are, when I say elderly, like they are old as fuck. And these old people do not like what these young filmmakers are up to. So obviously you can kind of figure out what happens from there. This is another movie. I love the style. I love how it feels like a grindhouse movie from the 70s. Unfortunately, I didn't think that even though I love these actors and this cast, I thought that the characters were really uninteresting, and just where it went was just so, like, I was like, is that it? Like, what was everyone talking about? Why is everyone saying this movie is incredible? I just could not wrap my head around it. And I think its biggest flaw is that I went in just wanting a fun slasher, and I didn't have any fun with it. So, I'm sad to say this, but X, my most disappointing film so far this year, is getting a very bad from me. And I know that's a very divisive opinion, but hey, it is what it is. Next up, we have the most recent box office champ, The Lost City, starring Sandra Bullock, Sandy B, Channing Tatum, Daniel Radcliffe, Divine, Joy Randolph, and Patty Harrison in a very thankless role. Oh, and Brad Pitt. This is a really fun little romantic comedy adventure, all about a romance novelist who gets kidnapped and her cover model, played by Channing Tatum, goes and saves her, and they're looking for this ancient relic in the jungle, basically. So it's a very 80s-like Romancing the Stone type movie that we haven't really seen in a while. So this movie isn't the savior of the romantic comedy genre that some people are saying that it is, but you know, we haven't had a big budget romantic comedy that's been good in a really long time, and this year we've gotten 3 already with this movie, I Want You Back, and Marry Me. Now personally, I like Marry Me the most out of those 3, but I really enjoyed all 3 of them. And I just had such a great time with The Lost City. I think some of the jokes do not land, and it's almost kind of like cringy when they don't land. It's almost painful to watch. But some of the humor is kind of funny. But this movie really relies on Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock's chemistry, and they're just so utterly likable. You can't not like this movie. So I had a lot of fun with it. It's nothing to write home about, but if you're in the mood for a silly, dumb, action-packed romantic comedy, then this is for you. So I'm going to say The Lost City is just okay. Next up, we have the horror thriller from Ireland, You Are Not My Mother. This is written and directed by Kate Dolan, and let me read the synopsis. It says, in a North Dublin housing estate, Char's mother goes missing. When she returns, Char is determined to uncover the truth of her disappearance and unearth the dark secrets of her family. So this movie got some really great reviews coming out of film festivals, and I was maybe expecting too much. The one thing I will say about You Are Not My Mother is that Hazel Dupe, who plays Char, and Carolyn Bracken as her mother are phenomenal. Carolyn Bracken does some crazy shit with her body and her voice, and she's just so frightening. And the two of them really make this movie. My issues with it are that you never really grasp the relationship that Char and her mother have before this incident happens, so you never connect with that relationship, so it's not as affecting as it could be. And also the script feels like it's almost like the first draft of a script, like it really needed to be edited and tweaked, because there's things that just make absolutely no sense in the movie. Like, there's these bullies that are just tormenting Char, and one moment this girl is being super mean to her, and then the next moment all of a sudden they're best friends. Just little things like that that really were just totally incredulous to me, that took me out of the film. So unfortunately, I left You Are Not My Mother feeling really disappointed. I get why people liked this movie. It is different than a lot of horror movies. It's really beautifully shot and it's well acted, but it's just not all that scary, and not a lot of it makes all that much sense. So I'm gonna say You Are Not My Mother it's not very bad, it's meh. I would say that it's a meh movie. Then we have the drama Topside, which I actually saw a year ago at the Seattle Film Festival, and when I first saw it, I thought it was really good, but I didn't think all that much of it. And a year later, this film Topside is just ingrained in my memory. It has not left. So I think this is a fantastic film that is absolutely a must-see. It is about a young woman who has a 5-year-old daughter, and they live in a community of homeless people in an abandoned subway station under New York. And the woman and her daughter have to leave this community because the homeless are being eradicated. And she needs to come up with some money. So she goes up to the real world, into the city, and the young girl has never really seen the city before. So she's thrown into this world that she's never experienced before. And her mom basically has to do some terrible things to come up with some money. Now, this is a film that transports you into a unthinkable, unimaginable place. If you've never been homeless before, you don't really have these experiences, and it really puts you in these characters' shoes. And I thought that's what this film did so beautifully. I do think that the film at the end doesn't really pull it together completely, but besides that, like I said, it's just sizzled into my brain, and it's just a beautiful little film that I will not soon forget. So I will say that Topside is very good. And last but not least, we have this film called Nitrum from Australia. And this film stars Caleb Landry Jones, Judy Davis, Anthony LaPaglia, and Essie Davis from The Babadook. And it's directed by Justin Kurzel, who did the Snowtown Murders, I think it's called, another true crime Australian film about serial killers. So this is all about the 1996 Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania. And this is a really hard one because it almost feels as if Nitrum is completely unnecessary. Like, why do we need a movie about this atrocity that happened? And but then you can think about all the other true crime stories. Like, why are we fascinated by true crime? And I think it's about finding a deeper understanding of why these terrible things occur, so that hopefully they might never happen again. I think that this is a beautifully shot movie, and the quartet of performers here are absolutely incredible. So the craft and the talent on display in Nitrum is indisputable. But once it got to where it was going, I just felt like this sense of emptiness. And I know that's probably what the filmmakers wanted you to feel, is just this sense of dread and emptiness and desperation. And I don't know, it just made me feel really gross inside. And I think it's just an incredibly crafted film, but it's just not a movie for me, and I never, ever want to see it again. But do I think it's worth a watch for true crime lovers especially? I do, absolutely, but this is kind of a one-and-you're-done situation, and it's so slow-moving that I had a really hard time getting through it the first time anyways. So I'm going to say that Nitrum is just okay, and it's definitely one I will never visit again. So, now that we have all of our movies, and we have at least one in every tier, that usually never happens, we're gonna start off at the very bottom. And the worst of the worst, it's all by itself, and it deserves to be by itself there, is Asking for It. Then in the very bad tier, God, these movies are all really bad. I'm gonna say that out of these three movies, X is the best, though still my most disappointing. Then I will say Those Who Wish Me Dead, just because I appreciate what the filmmakers were going for and that they accomplished it. It just was a really boring movie. And then Deep Water, man, like, that should have been so much better. It has no excuses, basically. Going up to the meh tier, I will keep it there. These two films there. You Are Not My Mother is definitely meh. Windfall, I would say, is close to just okay, but at the end of the day, just forgettable as all hell. And then going on up to the just okay tier. I'll definitely leave Nitrum there just because I don't plan on ever watching it again. I will say that The Lost City is above The Atom Project, but not as good as Turning Red. And as crazy as this is, I would watch The Weekend Away over Turning Red again, which is crazy for me to say because it's a Pixar film versus a basically trashy Lifetime thriller that's on Netflix. But I really liked what The Weekend Away provided me. It's unapologetically what it is. So The Weekend Away stays at the top of the just okay tier. Moving up to very good, I will say Jackass Forever goes to the bottom of this list. Oh, this is really hard. And then I will say that Topside can stay there. And then between Fresh and The Outfit, I love both of these movies so much. And there's almost a part of me that feels like these will both end up in my top 10 of the year, but we still have so much more to go. But I'm going to say that I will probably want to rewatch The Outfit more than I will want to rewatch Fresh, even though they're both fantastic. So I'm going to put The Outfit above Fresh. So that means that the worst film of March 2022 is Asking for It, and the top 3 films are The Outfit, Ultrasound, and the number 1 film is The Batman. Thank you so much, guys, for watching Lost in the Reel. I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking of all of the new films that I saw in March of 2022. Please let me know if you'd like to see more ranking videos like this one on my channel. It does take a lot of work for me to get through the editing of these, so please let me know if it's worth it and if you enjoy it. And until next time, my friends, take care.